If you think cars were expensive since the pandemic, wait until you see what happens if the UAW gets all of their demands. We're going to go into that right after this message from my sponsor. Have you ever Googled your name? If you have, you were probably shocked to see some of your personal information floating around for the whole world to see. Every once in a while, I Google myself just for fun. I'm always surprised what kind of things are floating around the internet. It's just creepy that these companies have this information on me. So this is what they do. These data brokers are making money hand over fist by selling your info to robocallers, spammers, and in some cases, much worse. This is why I'm talking about today's sponsor, Aura. Aura can identify data brokers who are exposing your information and then submit opt-out requests on your behalf. Brokers are legally required to remove your info if you ask them to, but they make it super hard to do that. So let Aura handle all of it for you. Now you can get off of all of those lists. You can try Aura free for 2 weeks using my link here below, aura.com/Craig. Aura does so much more to protect you and your family from online threats that you can't even see. It's really easy to set up so you don't have to bother downloading several different apps just to get things like parental controls, antivirus, VPN, password management, identity theft, insurance, and even more. You get everything at one affordable price. So let Aura do all the hard work of keeping you safe online so you can focus on other tasks with peace of mind. So most of you know that the auto workers strike is in full swing, and among their demands, they're asking for a 46% raise over 4 years, a 32-hour work week, but to be paid for 40 hours of work. And they're demanding things like all temporary employees be made permanent, including giving them full medical insurance. Jesus, the only way you can do that is get elected to our government. What surprises me is that the starting wage for the UAW auto worker is only $18 an hour. Here in California, our dictator, our Governor Gavin Newsom, just recently mandated the minimum wage for fast food workers should be $20 an hour for flipping hamburgers. Come on, man, what is going on? This is the participation trophy generation, I swear to God. Automakers have already offered a 20% increase in wages, and the UAW countered with a 36% counter offer. Automakers also agreed to initiate cost of living raises, commonly known as COLA raises. And if UAW gets all of its demands, analysts say that this will cost the big three $80 billion. But in fairness, the UAW is still working on reduced compensation that they agreed to during the global shutdown. Further, automakers have been making fat profits in the past few years, crazy profits. From 2013 to 2022, they increased their profits by 92%, totaling $250 billion. They're making money. Vehicle prices have increased 30% since 2013. CEO pay has increased 40% since 2013. Worker pay increased only a paltry 6%. I think the UAW has a pretty good case. And profits for 2023 are looking to be around $32 billion to the automakers' balance sheets. They're making big money. Just look at the cost of new cars. For now, the strike is only limited to 3 plants, so it's only affecting about 14,000 workers. But if it expands, it could mean a loss of over $5 billion for the big 3 car companies until the strike is finished. So that would not be good for anybody. For the record, I'm not against unions. I'm against things like that you can't fire bad workers. And I've seen this with lots of labor unions. I'm also against the notion that you get automatic raises no matter how bad your performance is. That is not a good thing, so I'm not in favor of that. But I will say this, I'm not really impressed with the quality of the work done by the rank and file UAW worker. Why do I say that? Because I've actually been to a bunch of factories. I've mentioned this before, but in the mid-1990s, I was working for NGK spark plugs, and I spent some time in Japan. And at the time, NGK was making spark plugs, O2 sensors, and NOx sensors for many car companies all around the world, including American manufacturers. As part of that job, I had to come back to the United States and help the Japanese engineers meet with sub-assembly guys and see these car factories and see how everything's coming together. And among my duties, I visited many car factories in Japan and in America. In the space of about about 18 months. I think I did 9 car factories all over the United States and several in Japan, including Lexus, Honda, Toyota, Nissan, Chrysler, Ford. I'm missing a couple, but you get the idea. But compared to the factories that I visited in Japan, the US factories were dirty, and if you sit around and watch some of the employees, it was clear that the Japanese workers were always working hard, and they were more disciplined and more focused on their work, and it seemed to be more careful and more organized. In American factories, I didn't see that same kind of thing. It's kind of hustle, but without really paying attention. That's just my impression. It may be different today. But of course, there are always going to be good employees, mediocre employees, and lazy ones. It happens in every industry, so you can't condemn a whole union or even a whole factory. If you go to 2 different factories, one in Japan and America, and you'll see a difference. So what's the difference in American auto assembly plants? Well, it's the United Auto Workers, the unions, or UAW for short. The UAW has helped keep car companies honest and has increases the wages and the benefits at a level that can help their workers support their families. And that's a good thing. The days of sweatshops are long gone thanks to the union, so they have had a positive effect. Believe it or not, there are unions in other countries. In Japan, the most common type of union is the enterprise union. These unions are formed by employees of a single company or business establishment. It also uses what they call collective bargaining, but it is done only at that workplace level, that one factory, that one store, whatever it is, but not across the whole industry. So each factory has its own CBA, collective bargaining agreement. So it's different. Mexico has unions too. However, 80 to 90% of those Mexican collective bargaining agreements are negotiated by company-dominated unions and are approved without worker consent. So basically, management is the union, and they try to do something for everybody, right? In theory. So let's look at the wages of the auto workers in various countries all around the world. This is going to blow your mind. In China, the average auto worker makes about $1.93 to about $4.27 an hour. In Mexico, the average wage is about $2.70 an hour, but can be up to $4.30 an hour for specialists. Apartments around that factory cost about $500 a month, so you can do the math and figure out if they're making a good monthly wage or not. In Romania, the average monthly wage is about $638 a month, which comes out to about $4 an hour. To rent a 1-bedroom apartment in Romania, where the plant is located, for about $600 a month. So it's halfway decent wage, I guess. In Japan, it's quite different. It's around $50 an hour, or $2,400 per month, or about $31,000 per year. A 1-bedroom apartment today in Nagoya, where I was staying for 9 months, is about $600 USD per month. So they're making a living wage, I guess. In South Korea, it's closer to $25 per hour or $4,000 per month, and up to about $50,000 for top craftsmen or super specialists or computer programmers. In Seoul, Korea, an average 1-bedroom apartment is about $400. So Seoul, Korea is doing very, very well. In Munich, Germany, where they also build cars, the average hourly wage is 14 euros, which is just under 15 US dollars. But experienced workers can get up to $31 an hour. And so we call it about $2,400 per month for an annual salary of $55,000. A 1-bedroom apartment in Munich will cost you about $2,000 a month. So you can kind of look at the standard of living in each country with these wages and then local costs. And of course, in America, a rookie putting in 40 hours a week on the line in an American car factory gets paid $18.54. And once they're tenured, they earn $24 an hour. So that's not a terrible wage. Averaging all the workers' pay in the factory comes out to about $28 per hour, about $4,500 a month, which comes out to $57,000 a year. And at $57,000 a year, that, my friends, makes building cars more expensive than producing cars than almost everywhere else in the world. And so those prices have to reflect the cost of the labor. Rents in Sterling Heights, where there's a factory, cost about $1,300 a month. So the people are sitting on $57,000 a year for one salary with a 2-worker home is doing pretty well. But now, if you're a car company, where would you want to build your car? Remember, American car companies are publicly owned. That means they have stocks, right? They have a fiduciary duty to maximize profits for their shareholders. So they have to charge enough money to make a profit. It might seem that the UAW already has a sweet deal compared to other countries, but living standards and high prices in other countries are very different. Right now, we're still sitting about 8% inflation because of what this administration has been doing. It hurts everybody here, union workers or not. It would be an apple versus orange comparison to compare an American auto worker to all but maybe those who work in Germany. That's the two that are most close. So what does the UAW want from auto manufacturers? Well, I'll tell you. I mentioned this earlier. The union is demanding an end to these concessions and made to the three companies during the financial crisis that began way back in 2007, which I think they're entitled to that. Its members, employed by Ford, GM, and Stellantis, have experienced a 19% decline in their wages after accounting for inflation since 2008. Definitely they need to get a raise. Absolutely. I'm 100% behind that. All of this is totally reasonable from where I sit. Among other things, their demands includes more paid time off and seeing all temporary workers made permanent right now. It also has called for a 32-hour work week without a pay cut, which means basically you're working only 32 hours, but you get paid for 40. Oh, that's a sweet deal. Welcome to the American government. I can't get behind that one. I'm sorry. This isn't a charity. We're not running a charity. You work, you get benefits, okay? And you're getting great benefits, so hush up. As you see from this chart, of course, there's no way Americans can live on the wages that are paid to factory workers in other countries because the standard of living is so different. That's why cars built in the United States are going to cost more than a comparable car produced almost anywhere else. And this is not new. In the 1970s and the 1980s, everybody was freaking about Japanese car companies because they were accused of dumping super cheap cars in America to get a foothold. Americans started buying them up, and before long, the big three were getting crushed by cheap four-door cars that got 2 or 3 times better gas mileage. Because the Japanese auto workers made much less money, the US government stepped in and created tariffs, which forced the Japanese companies to build assembly plants in the United States and hire American workers. Do you remember that? One day there was no Japanese car factories in the United States, and the next day there was like 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 or whatever. Nissan got a factory, Mazda, Toyota, Mitsubishi, Subaru, BMW, and then I know it's not Japanese, Mercedes, and now even in Hyundai and Kia all have factories building cars here right in the United States to get away from the tariffs. That puts companies on even ground. Traveling around the world, I realized this. If you live in Germany and an American sedan costs more than a comparable BMW sedan, what do you think they're going to buy? And the answer is a BMW, because American cars, being honest, don't have a really great reputation for quality. I'll just say that, whoever's fault it is, I'm not going to put a finger to. If you drive around in Japan, 3 or 4 times I've been there, I don't think I've ever seen one American car except at a car show, which was a Corvette. They're not big fans of American cars for a number of reasons. Won't get into that. Everybody's now competing in a global market, right? You know this because you buy your stuff from Amazon and most of it comes from China, right? So we can't make a refrigerator for $99 and ship it to China because it doesn't work that way, because the wages are very different. It's the same thing is going on with cars. So I'm not suggesting that you just start paying massive salaries to these car unions just because they demand more. There has to be a balance. You can't drive up the labor so high that it bankrupts the company. To remain profitable, car companies will need several things to do this. First off, they're going to have to raise the prices of their cars. They just has to go up. Install more robots. Robots don't ever get sick and they never get pregnant. That lowers costs for labor. They also need to import more parts or sub-assemblies from other countries where those products can be produced for less, including wiring harnesses, fasteners, linkages, things like that. So from where I sit, the best balance in these negotiations is basically profit share. If the company is doing well, everybody should be doing well. And you can't have these crazy lopsided benefits paid out to executives without doing something for the people who are actually building the freaking cars. Either way, no matter who wins, car prices will continue to rise. We already know that. And as we get to the end of gasoline engines, it's going to get even worse because we're just going to have electric cars. It's the early times of the electric cars and everything's going to be expensive. It's not good for the working family. So remember that when you vote. Pick the candidate that can get inflation down, get more people working, get us more competitive in the global market. That's it for this week. Next week, we're going to start a special series taking a look at the Fast and Furious cars 20 years later. lately since so much new information has come to light. We've located a few cars that have been missing for more than a decade. There's some trades going on right now. People are buying cars, selling cars, and they're changing hands. Some are going to good people who are collectors. Some are just sitting on museum floors, which is, I'm fine with that. Other ones are just being hid away in a private collection that nobody will ever see, which I'm not a big fan of that. I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to reveal a few things, and it's going to be very interesting. So we'll start next week. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time.